Committee meeting of Wednesday, August 12th at 5 p.m. Our first item on the agenda is the acceptance of the minutes.
Motion to accept.
We actually tabled them, sorry, Tom.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Till
Okay.
August 24th. So we're going to just go past that and go with it. It was already tabled, so
Okay.
it wasn't going to be on tonight's agenda. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Under communications, I see nothing, so I'm going to go straight to Dr. Cron with the superintendent's report.
And I'm going to pass on that. And
Oh. This is like a volley. We'll go to nothing under reports. Old business will go into the reopening plan. Back to you.
Thank you. So I'd like to begin by giving a brief financial overview so that everyone understands sort of the journey we've been on since March 13th last year. So what you are looking at begins with the list of furloughs. We, in March, April, and May, furloughed a total of 97 employees for a total savings to the district of $890,544.50, which is 4% of our general fund salary line, or 3.5% of the total general fund budget. We also furloughed revolving fund workers, the daycare, the before and after school, and the cafeteria. They're highlighted in yellow because those highlighted in yellow remain furloughed at this time. There were 54 total revolving fund furloughs for a total of $151,403.25. So the total savings to the district through furloughs was $1,041,947.75, which represents 4.5% of our overall salary line, or 3.6% of the overall budget. The current status of our budget, if you look at the top left corner, this 26.9 number, that was the number that we had before COVID. So before COVID, if you remember, the Student Opportunities Act came through and gave quite a substantial boost to our Chapter 70 money. So we were due to realize about a $1.6 million increase over the previous year. That set our general fund budget at that time at $26,928,952. Post-COVID, we were told to reduce there was going to be a substantial reduction in our Chapter 70 and our local aid, 10%. So we were told to reduce that we were going to be reduced by 10%. That new number puts us at $25,521,514, leaving us with a $1.4 million deficit. If you slide over to the far right here, we have done a lot of work to close that gap. Our budget would have been $30 million, but the May town meeting number is now $28,293,514. This $650,000 that we have penciled in there, last week the governor announced additional Chapter 70 to communities, and the additional Chapter 70 to Rockland is just over $1 million. So 70% of that, minus some holdbacks that the town wants to do for reserves, entitles the schools at this time to $650,000 in additional Chapter 70, which helps us to close that gap. But we are still looking at a $1.8 million deficit. So what are we going to do about that? What we've done so far is some substantial cuts. We eliminated 26 positions, and if you look down here to the bottom of this spreadsheet, those 26 positions are represented here. We were due to add 8 Student Opportunity Act compliance positions for a total of $469,000. 10 teachers not replaced and 1 layoff, so those are people who retired or left us and we just didn't replace them, for a total of $626,527. 8 paras not replaced, and breakage. And breakage is if a senior teacher who's making $90,000 retires and we replace that teacher with a $50,000 teacher, we then have $30,000 in what we call breakage, which is savings, so that's called breakage. So for a total salary reduction of $1,355,644. Some other things that we did to save money. The salary 2 is things like coaches and clubs and activities that did not take place. So this was work that was not being done that we did not pay for, but we had budgeted for. So that's a total of $44,809. Maintaining our expenses, number 1, we reduced our expenses, things like supplies to the classroom. We reduced all of those by 50% to 25%. For a total savings of $277,312. We also did some creative planning with our SPED payments, and we were able to carry some of our tuition bills into next year, which allowed us to save some money to close out FY20 accurately. So it left us with a total at the end of that of a deficit of $1.4 million. So $1,404,885.58. So our current status is with the additional, if we're to receive the additional $650,000 from the town, coupled with the work that we've done already in furloughs, and I just want to again take a moment to thank each and every employee who was furloughed for your patience, for your professionalism. It's a very difficult thing to be furloughed, and we tried to do it as kindly and professionally as possible, but it's still scary, and you have all been exceptional, so thank you for that. But we are still left at this time, even with the additional funds from the Chapter 70, of a deficit of $413,295. I think it's important to credit Jane Hackett at this time for her incredible work since March 13th, since the time of this crisis. She has been exceptional, and we're very, very lucky to have her. So thank you, Jane. I would like to also point out that this budget that I've presented to you does not account for some additional COVID-related costs that we know we're going to incur. Remote education has costs that we are discovering on a daily basis. We need to put monitors on each of our buses. That's a cost. COVID watchers. We need someone to monitor the COVID room, and it can't be the nurse. So who's it going to be? Is it going to be a teacher, or is it going to be someone else? So all of these positions we're going to need a human there. Storage units. There's a lot of furniture that cannot be used with the new social distancing guidelines that have been put in place. Each building now has a storage unit, and they're filling up with all the excess furniture that they cannot use. Certain furniture that we can't use because you can't socially distance with it. Like, we used a lot of tables, but they just don't work in this situation. Transportation costs that we don't know about yet. Personal protective equipment. And then I put et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because on a daily basis we're finding new things that cost money that we now have to pay for as a result of COVID. SPED-specific additional costs, PPEs, just to give people a very specific idea of what I'm talking about. Shields, plexiglass walls that have been going up throughout the district, in our offices and in other areas throughout the buildings. Also gowns, gloves, other personal protective equipment. Compensatory SPED costs, which I anticipate we are going to have to face. We owe every special education student in the district a certain level of service. And just because we have a crisis right now does not mean that we are not responsible for that service. So I anticipate that we are going to have to find a way to provide compensatory services to our special education students who did not receive those services as thoroughly as all of us would have liked, quite honestly. Tuition, there may be additional tuitions for SPED for students who are unable to participate in any of our proposed plans to return, and also additional transportation. So these are some costs that we anticipate. Some of them we know we're going to face, others we're still unsure. But potential remedies include one of two things: either additional revenue, either we receive additional revenue from some source, or which could come in the form of federal or state revenue, or town revenue, or additional layoffs, which we would like to avoid. So again, we are currently looking at starting the school year with a $413,000 deficit. We do have Revolving funds, we do have things that we can fall back on, but it's a very dangerous thing to deplete your revolving funds beyond where they are, and we don't want to do that if at all possible. Also, there was one, we also had additional special education costs that came in. I'm pointing down here to special education. Every spring, and those of you who have been members for quite a while, you know this happens every spring. We get move-ins that are very expensive. So this spring, our bill for new out-of-district special education students, coupled with other tuition increases, equals $272,879.42. So again, that's just a cost that we're incurring. So far, thank you. So I just wanted to give a brief overview of our current financial situation. Again, I think since March 13th, we have made every proactive move humanly possible. And I just, again, want to thank Jane for her work and Colleen for Lizzie for her work in this area. Both have been just amazing. And I think we've done everything that we can, but we are still in a very difficult financial situation. I would now like to switch over to just to go through the reopening plan. Now this is, you've seen the plan. We went over this plan on the 5th, so I'm not going to go through everything that I went through on the 5th, but for the benefit of members and for the benefit of those at home who are watching for the first time, I'm going to go through some things that you've already heard. So the agenda, what I'm going to talk about, I already gave you the financial update. A few facts about COVID-19. I'm going to discuss the guiding principles that the steering committee developed at the beginning of this planning process. I want to talk about remote learning 2.0, the family choice and how that's going and the numbers that are coming in. I want to review some highlights of the safety plan, the timeline for the reopening of school, and I want to talk briefly about our plans for social justice, equity, and inclusion in the district. And finally, our next steps in the timeline. So to get right into it, I think it's important to acknowledge from the start that the COVID-19 pandemic is a serious and deadly illness. If there's anyone out there who thinks it's fake, I implore you, I beg you to read and find some facts. This is not a joke. People are dying every day. People who are suffering from this are getting long-term effects that we don't understand yet. I think one of the greatest fears that I have as a 52-year-old man, personally, is that I get it and that I incur some sort of damage to my lungs that then lasts for the rest of my life. So I'm not trying to be scary to people, but if there's anyone out there who thinks that this thing is not for real, I'm imploring you to do some reading and to reconsider your position. According to the CDC, as of today, in the United States, there have been 5,119,711 total cases, resulting in 163,651 deaths. As of today in Massachusetts, according to the CDC, 122,393 cases have been confirmed, resulting in 8,751 total deaths. In Plymouth County, as of today, 9,288 cases have resulted in 723 deaths. And in Rockland, this data is about a week old. Fewer than 300 cases have been reported, which has resulted in approximately 30 deaths. And as of the 4th of August, there were 6 active cases in Rockland. Just briefly about COVID, it's important to acknowledge that it's spread primarily through respiratory droplets that are produced when an infected person coughs, sneezes, talks, or raises their voice. Droplets land in the mouths or noses of people who are nearby and are possibly inhaled. Studies show that a significant portion of individuals with COVID-19 are asymptomatic, and that even those who eventually develop symptoms are pre-symptomatic. They can transmit the virus to others before showing symptoms. What can we do? We can practice good respiratory hygiene, cough into your elbow, cover your mouth. Practice proper hand washing, maintain appropriate social distance, wear a covering on the nose and mouth to stop the spread of germs, avoid touching our eyes, nose, or mouth, or face, stay home when sick, employ a rigorous cleaning and disinfecting plan, and employ a comprehensive safety plan. The guiding principles created by the steering committee at the start of the reentry process, we said these are the things that we think this plan should be based on, and every time we have come to a difficult question along the way, we refer back to these guiding principles to make sure that we're being honest with them. So the first thing is that we must protect the health and safety of all students, families, and staff. We must support the mental health of students, staff, and families. We must support teachers as they adjust practice to meet social distancing needs. We must be consistent. We must encourage everyone to lead with a positive, flexible attitude. And I must say that our administrative team has been outstanding, and not just our administrative team, but our teachers that I have interacted with, that the administration has interacted with, have been overwhelmingly positive, and I cannot thank you enough. It has sustained me through some very difficult days, so thank you. Prioritize core academic skills and key curriculum standards, and it must be personalized to meet the needs of Rockland. This is Rockland's plan. It's not Abington's plan. It's not Situate's plan. It's our plan. It's designed to meet our needs and the needs of our students. It's affordable, needs to be affordable, practical, and age-appropriate. Just a note about Remote Learning 2.0. A lot of folks have in their head the way remote learning was going in the spring, and I just want to remind everyone that we stumbled into remote learning last year. When we first closed, we thought we were closing for a week, 2 weeks. We didn't know. We weren't grading kids. We weren't taking attendance. We were doing our best, and over time, when we realized this was going to go on, we tried to sort of tighten things up. But once you begin with no grades and no attendance, the kids lose, there's just a lack of interest. So I want people to understand that remote learning this year will be very, very different. It'll be a more robust curriculum. It will be aligned to state learning standards. Last year we were focusing on bridge standards, those standards that would get kids as ready for the next grade as possible. But this year when we start out, we are starting out with content state learning standards. There will be face-to-face synchronous learning activities for all students. Examples include large group video, email, work packets, reading lists, learning platforms. There will be a strict tracking system for attendance, participation, and grading. There will be one-on-one tutoring for students, as well as individual and group counseling as needed. There will be small group interventions, such as the What I Need block, which has been developed by our elementary principals. And there will be synchronous activities in music, art, PE, and STEAM during remote learning weeks. So parents have been asked, and today is the last day, we've asked for everyone to turn in to give us their responses by today. Of course, we will continue to accept this information as people bring it to us, but folks were asked to choose between a hybrid learning model, that is half in school and half remote, or option B, a fully remote learning model, 100% learning remotely at home. Now, I've been very honest about this. I implore everyone who is physically able to select the hybrid learning model. Anytime we can get your students in school, in front of teachers, it's a better education than something we can provide remotely. So I strongly encourage everyone who is physically able to adopt the hybrid learning model. At this time, I can tell you that our elementary schools are looking at about between 30 and 40 students per school who are opting for the fully remote model. The middle school has about 80 students out of 700 and, well, where are we with them? 750 students, almost 780 students this year at the middle school. It's the largest class we've had in a long time. And the high school is looking at about 35 students. I'm giving you approximations because, again, it's changing on a daily basis. So option A, what would it look like? Half the population would be assigned to cohort A and the other half to cohort B. Cohort A would be 50% of the students. They would learn remotely through synchronous and asynchronous experiences. And cohort B would include the other 50% of the K-12 population. And then they would switch the following week. Cohorts will be diverse, inclusive, and of mixed ability groups. The learning students do during in-person weeks will be the same for both cohorts. That way, if we do get a case or we do get an outbreak and we need to go fully remote, everyone is on the same page. One of the benefits of participating in option A, the hybrid learning model, is that we're able to build on what we've learned and be able to quickly convert to remote teaching and learning should we need to. The Remote Learning Academy, it's designed specifically to respond to the needs of those students, families, and staff who are immunocompromised. Elementary students will engage in synchronous and asynchronous learning throughout the day with a curriculum that aligns to that provided to the students in the hybrid learning model. Middle school 5 through 8 will be placed on remote teams. They will be engaged with teachers both synchronously and asynchronously in 5 separate classes. The high school will be engaged in synchronous and asynchronous learning throughout the day with a curriculum that aligns to that provided to the students in the hybrid learning model. I'll go into detail a little bit more with these later. One thing that is different in this presentation compared to the one that was given on the 5th is I've added in some times. So the only difference, the only thing that you're looking at now are times as opposed to what you've already seen. But this is a sample. This is the schedule that we currently have outlined for grades K to 2, the hybrid schedule. So you can see this is what the in-person day would look like and their flow, and this is what their at-home remote would look like and their flow. 3 and 4, the only difference here is that our grade 3 and 4 students include reading classes. The middle school hybrid, this is their in-school week. We are looking at students being on a grade level team and placed in a cohort that will remain together for all classes. In grade 8, students will not be placed on a team, but they'll be put in cohort groups. They will participate in 5 classes per day. Teachers will teach 5 classes per day, and one of them will be remote, which allows us to do both the hybrid model. It's important that we dismiss students at 1:40 because those teachers need to be free for that last class to teach remotely. Middle school remote learning week, students at home will participate in 5 synchronous classes per day. At the end of the day, we will hold office hours from 2:35 till the end of the contractual day at 3:05, and unified arts would be provided every day for 1 period. The UA teachers would be attached to a team. The hybrid schedule for the high school, very similar. The students, instead of taking 5 classes, would take 6 classes, but they would only take 5 per day, and there's a rotation that drops. Students will be assigned on average 30 minutes of homework per day, and they will take, again, 5 classes, 6 total classes that includes 1 elective. Their hybrid remote learning week would look as follows. They'd have synchronous learning, they would have asynchronous learning, and we're hoping that every student gets a world language as well as their 4 major disciplines and electives. The elementary remote academy model, this is including times at this time. It would begin at 8:45 and end at 2:50. This slide shows you how when the students will be working independently and when the students will be working with teachers. The middle school remote academy, they would work in online classes for 30 minutes per class period, and the remainder of the class will be spent working on assignments through Google Classroom. There will be collaboration and there will be activities. Remote academy and hybrid teachers will follow the same curriculum to support students seamlessly, returning to a hybrid model. Virtual activities will be planned by a remote teacher with support from K to 12 department heads, and the academy will be overseen by the middle school assistant principals. High school remote academy, the students who enroll in the RHS Remote Learning Academy will engage in online coursework through EduSeer Learning. The guidance counselors will serve as a school point of contact, helping Remote Learning Academy students register for courses, check in daily, and communicate with parents and submit grades. So students who complete coursework with EduSeer will receive letter grades, and we are asking that a student who registers for the fully remote academy commit to remaining in that remote academy for a semester. Having students switch in and out of during the middle of a semester would be very, very challenging, so we would like to minimize that. Of course, if we have a student who is selected to be remote and it's an absolute horror show and they're not doing well, we're going to find a way to get them back in school. So everybody, please, our default position is please stay there for the semester, but of course if we have something that isn't working, we're going to be reasonable about it. The high school remote academy, we're looking at a morning check-in with a teacher, and then they would take their English class, their math or science, their history, world language, and an elective. Proposed opening schedule. Phase 1 would begin August 31st to September 3rd and would be faculty staff orientation, where we could orient the staff to the hybrid procedures and protocols. Our staff needs to learn everything from how we are going down the hallway, to how we're entering school, to how to wear a mask, to how to wash hands, to how are we handling lunch, to how are we handling discipline now. Is there anything different with discipline that we haven't had to do before? Phase 2 will last from September 8th through 11th. There will be a student and family orientation period. We will welcome students back in smaller groups, explain the procedures, social distancing and PPE requirements, and this is a very important point. We will distribute Chromebooks to all students pre-K to 12. So we are going to be a one-to-one district pre-K to 12 beginning this September. Every student in this district will have a Chromebook. I think that's an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah.
Part of this is funded through the CARES Act. So folks at home who are saying, if you're in such budget deficit, how are you pulling that off? Well, we're getting some help from the federal government. Thank you very much. Over $400,000 received through the CARES Act to help fund this initiative. So we're very, very appreciative of access to that money. Phase 3 would be September 14th to September 25th. It would be fully remote for a 10-day period for 2 weeks. Both groups would engage in remote learning. During this 2-week period, teachers will teach from their classrooms in school, and students would learn from home. It'll allow us to work out connectivity or software issues with households and to refine and focus on remote teaching strategies and procedures. And Phase 4, which begins September 28th and ends on October 23rd, we would begin our in-person instruction, welcoming in our first hybrid group at that time, and then the rotation would continue from there on out beyond October 23rd. We won't just stop after October 23rd. Okay, just wanted to clear that up. Safety protocols and procedures. This was very important work. We're still working on this as new guidance is coming in, but we have a very comprehensive safety protocols and procedures plan. It was developed cooperatively with the Rockland Public Schools head nurse, our director of facilities, the Rockland health agent, and the Teachers Association. And we're receiving guidance again from DESE and the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, among others. And we developed this comprehensive safety protocols and procedures. We have walked and reviewed safety plans for all 5 school buildings with our town health agent, the fire chief, and the town building inspector. We have contracted with Universal Environmental Consultants of Framingham. They will be evaluating our HVAC systems on the 13th and 15th of this month, and then I will look for their report and I will share that with you as soon as we receive it. I will also be sharing that report with the union and the teachers as well. I'm going to just bop over to the full plan for a second. This is what the full plan looks like. It's 43 pages long. I'm just going to skip down to the safety section so that I can just give you a sense of the level of detail that we have developed with this plan. Please work for me. Almost. Sorry, folks. Here we go. So health, safety, and well-being. And when we get to the safety protocols and procedures, I was just there. Being fussy. And there it is. Okay, so the last time I presented this to you, each one of these were a link to a separate document. And I think that was confusing for some at home who are trying to link to those documents, and some of them they needed permission. So what I've done is I've taken each one of these documents, and instead of it being a link, I've embedded it in the document and made it a bookmark. So each one of these documents are now contained in the entire document that everyone has received and will receive in the future. But we're covering everything from a protocol to what to do if someone is sick. I'll just take you to that bookmark, hopefully, if it's going to work, what to do if sick. And we walk through the steps that someone will take if they are sick, and what we will do with students. Be a very specific procedure If a student comes off the bus and doesn't look well, they'll go to the nurse, they'll be assessed. If we find that they're running a temperature, they'll be sent home and asked to get tested. We will then look to see, were they riding on the bus, and we can clean the bus. If we do have a positive test case, that triggers another set of activities. But I will tell you that as soon as we receive a positive case, I will be calling Delshawn Flip at Town Hall, our health agent, and we will be working collaboratively on our response to that. So we will be taking our lead from the health professionals when it comes to our response for how to handle our buildings. I'm going to jump back. So safety protocols and procedures are very thorough, and I'll let you go through them on your own. But I just wanted to touch on them again. I did go through them quite extensively during the last meeting. Just to touch on social justice, equity, and inclusion, I spoke a bit about this at our last meeting, but during the period of school closure, some students and families have been more vulnerable than others. It's important that we acknowledge that. So it has exacerbated systemic inequities that have existed for decades, and we cannot ignore the historic civil rights protests that are now ongoing in our major cities across the country. They are still going today. Some of them have been going for well over 60 days, and it's important that we address it. It's important that we talk to our students about it and we help them process it. Our plan for the coming school year will maintain our focus on the needs of all students, but we will also recognize the need to engage our students and staff in a self-inventory regarding systemic racism and our role as a school system in this struggle. So the way we are going about this is the senior administration team currently is doing a group read on So You Want to Talk About Race. It's a book. And we're going to begin with our book study and then discuss that. I will then most likely be sharing that book with the school committee and other community leaders so that we can engage in a larger discussion. And then I would like to see us engage the entire faculty and staff in a discussion around issues of race and equity. We are forming a district-wide diversity committee that will include parents, students, and teachers. And this group will be charged with assessing the Rockland Public Schools from a structural and procedural perspective, as well as looking at curriculum and access issues. Senior administration, again, as I mentioned, is beginning by doing a group read of So You Want to Talk About Race. And again, I will not try to pronounce the author's name because I will just make a mess of it. So next steps and timelines. Tonight we are meeting with the Rockland Finance Committee at 7 o'clock. That has a lot to do. It's primarily because of the change in Chapter 70 and the actions that the Finance Committee and the town have agreed to do. Back when we did our budget, we all agreed that if additional funds came forward, that the school would be receiving those additional funds to help support our efforts to reopen. And so that is really the focus of our meeting tonight. And I'll be presenting exactly what I presented to you at the start. We're going to distribute the plan to the faculty and staff. I plan to email that to them as the conclusion of our meeting. I always try to communicate in a particular order. I always want the school committee to know things first. I then want the faculty and staff to know things. I then want the students to know things, and I want the parents and families to know things. But I like to do things in a particular order out of respect, just out of respect. So I want to distribute then the plan to students and families, and then principals will be communicating some building and grade-specific information to parents. We will continue to collect requests and adjust staffing accordingly, and I will tell you that it's changing on a daily basis. Every day we receive new information or a new question that helps us or forces us to come up with some creative ways to meet our needs. But the plan needs to be submitted to DESE this Friday, the 14th, but I will tell you that they understand that these plans are not fully baked, okay? They have not come out of the oven. It's not dinner time yet. We still have a lot of work to do on the plan. The biggest piece of work that we have to do is we have to negotiate it with our teachers union. So that's a lot of work that we have left to do. And this tonight, the school committee putting their support behind this plan would be just one step along the process. We need to negotiate the details with our REA. And that, I'm so sorry for talking at you for that length of time. No good teacher talks for that amount of
Well,
time
they
without
talk,
asking
but
questions.
they don't keep them involved.
Yes. So I would then just like to ask, any questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. And
I have a question. Maintenance of Chromebooks.
yeah,
You have a help desk and stuff like that. What happens if students have troubles with their Chromebooks? What are they, I didn't see any procedure. Can we do that?
so one of the things we've done is we're adding a staff member
Okay.
to technology. Tim Wells works with just one other person, with Chris at this time.
Mhm.
So we'd like to add a third person in the technology department. We're going to have almost 2,400 devices out in the district, and that's going to put added pressure on our technology department. So that's one thing. The second thing that we know we need is a help desk during the day.
Yeah.
So if I'm a student at home, or I'm a parent and a student at home, and I get stuck, they need someone to call, and we want you to have someone to call.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to make that happen. Again, every time we come up with something that we need, I want to take you back to the very start when I showed you the financial situation, because there's a rub
cost for
there.
that, yeah.
So yeah, we plan to have some support for families on that regard, Tom.
Okay, everybody
Mr.
has
Mills.
Wi-Fi in the district, do we know?
So that's the other thing that we are going to be doing in phase 2 and phase 3, is making sure that every family is connected.
Mhm.
So our guidance counselors have been working with Comcast, and when families, if there is a family at home and you're hearing this, and you're probably not watching it on your computer if you don't have Wi-Fi,
Yeah.
but any family that is without internet, I implore you to contact your principal so that we know about it.
Right.
And the adjustment counselors are the point people in each building, and we will be trying to do everything we can to connect families. So Comcast has agreed at this time, given the COVID, that they are going to allow even folks who have had billing problems in the past to be connected.
Yeah.
So we're gonna this is gonna be tough. It's
Yeah.
gonna be one family at a time
Mhm.
with this.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Tom. Last time we sort of went in order, so.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to have you go first to begin with,
Okay.
because you probably had more questions.
Uh,
So, go ahead. Shoot away.
One of the things that I noticed in the reentry plan too was the cleaning regimen that we have. What happens if a student comes in with crutches or a wheelchair when they enter the building?
I don't understand.
Do we have them clean their utility, their crutches or their wheelchair before they come into the building?
Well, I would hope they should take care of that before they leave home. You want us to clean every,
No, I'm asking you there was some way of saying, have you cleaned this?
yeah.
And if you haven't, you need to clean it before you come into the
Yeah,
building.
I think you bring up a really good point, Mr. Mills, that a lot of the success or failure of this plan really falls on the student and the family. I was hearing this morning about colleges that are asking students to sign waivers and to sign agreements that they won't sue or they won't. But I think the bigger part is that we need a social contract with families, because we can have all kinds of great policies and procedures, and it can be perfect on paper, but if you're late for work and you discover that your son or daughter seems to have a temperature, you have a difficult decision to make. Okay? And I understand that's a difficult decision. I don't know how long you've worked there, how
Right.
secure your job is. I get it. But you're going to have to do what you need to do to not send your child to school. Please don't put that on us.
Right.
So we're really counting on the public to be responsible and to make responsible, difficult decisions and to not put us in that position. But there are going to be kids who come to school ill and the parents didn't see it,
Yeah.
so I totally get it. And then there are kids with allergies,
Yeah.
so we're going to be dealing with that. So,
Okay. That's it for now.
That's all you have?
So far.
All right.
I'll wait for another
We'll go
time.
around.
Go ahead.
Jamie?
Not too many questions. I think most of them were addressed last week. Some of the things I've been hearing are more related to special education and ELL. I know there's some more details in the Word document reentry plan versus in the PowerPoint,
Yep.
but maybe just a little bit more information that you could share with us as well as the public that's watching in regards to special education and the remote aspect or the hybrid model.
So two things about special education. Number one, you know, we have maybe 12% of our student population has an IEP. But some of those IEPs are very minimal. Some are minimal. A student has a processing challenge. They have an IEP for it. It's addressed in certain classes, but it's minimal. Other IEPs are significant, and we have students in sub-separate programs. I'm very concerned with what we're going to do for our sub-separate students, especially those who can't come to school. I'm very concerned. I don't have an answer. They need services. They need to be in school with a teacher. We have occupational therapy, we have OT, we have PT, physical therapy, we offer speech, all kinds of activities that require certain apparatus, that require certain environments. And how we're going to provide that to students, for example, who are unable to come to school, who have significant disabilities, we are working hard at that. Whether we're going to have to pay teachers to go to the home to deliver some of those services, I don't know at this point, but we're reaching out, we're working on it. We're talking to North River Collaborative about some possible things that we could do to provide services. But I will say that for 90% of our students with IEPs, on the hybrid model, we can provide services on the week that they're in school, and in some cases, we can make arrangements on their off week for them to come in to receive services. So students who are in our substantially separate programs will be coming to school every week in person because their class sizes are small enough to allow us to do that. But that does not address the needs of, say, a substantially separate student who is unable to come to school. So those are the ones that I'm most concerned with. Again, I'm not complaining, but we are an organization that was designed to function in a certain way, and now we have to provide services in a completely different format. So at a time when our budget is shrinking. So we're going to do everything we can to service those students, but it's a challenge. So I'd be dishonest if I didn't tell you how much of a challenge that is. It worries me.
No, thank you. That I think is a little bit more information that hopefully people are hearing that things are continuing to progress. So thank you.
Yeah.
No more questions.
No more questions?
Yeah.
Tim?
I just have a quick question. When you email out the remote plan, the reentry plan, is it going to be translated?
It will be translated.
Okay.
Yep.
And then is there a note in here regarding getting families set up with Comcast to reach out to their principals?
Yes.
directly? Okay. And that's all for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Biggins, you went first last time, so I let you be last.
Oh, thank you.
This time.
Well, I mean, as Jill said, or Jamie said, excuse me, much of this we've had the opportunity to consider and chat about last week and debate last week, so I don't necessarily have a whole lot that's new, other than just a question, and then I do have some comments. One of the things the committee talked about last week and we asked about was maybe the potential of having some sort of a public forum, a virtual forum by which the parents might be able to ask questions or be able to interact. Is that something that we're looking into or something that could be possible?
Sure. Yeah. I have to say, I don't relish the thought of having a meeting with 1,000 people that are all asking questions at one time. So I would want to do it in some sort of a controlled fashion.
Yes, I agree.
Where
Yeah.
people sent their questions to, say, the way we did the big staff meetings is they would send their questions to Colleen Forlizzi.
Sure.
And then she would read the questions aloud, and then I would do my best to answer them, or Jane or Colleen would do their best to answer them.
Great.
So yeah, I think that's something that we can definitely do. We could schedule that for next week.
Sure. Great, thank you
Yep.
very much. And then
Sure.
other than that, just some sort of commentary. My wife sent me this, and it's something that I read, and I thought it was spot on in a lot of ways, and Ellen, maybe you've read it already, and I'm sure probably some other folks maybe have read it as was quite public. The Situate Public Schools sent out an open letter. Are you aware of this?
Yes.
Yeah. I want to share with you, talk a little bit about it as a sort of a preface to my comments and the work that you and everyone, this committee and everyone has done towards this reopening plan. So bear with me for just a second. This is from William Burkhead, who's the superintendent of Situate Public Schools. And it's an open letter to Massachusetts Superintendents Association, Superintendents Association of School Committees, Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker, and the Commissioner of Education. And he says, I am here in my office on a Sunday, again away from my family, responding personally to the 500-plus emails and correspondence sent to me, CC'd our school committee, on people's opinion on our recent reopening plans. I'm not complaining about working on a Sunday or every Sunday. Many of us do that. My point of this letter is to share with you my frustration that I believe we are working harder, not smarter. Responsibilities for our school reopening plans, insert X, Y, and Z, doesn't really matter the plan, have been if you don't bring your kids back, they will continue to experience trauma, socio-emotional deprivation, loss of social interaction with peers, and continue to widen achievement gaps, and it's our fault. If you bring our teachers back and one gets sick or dies, it's going to be on us too. So either way, your decisions are harming the people that you hired to protect. Lawyers respond to the questions of are superintendents liable if someone gets sick or dies on the defendant who will be sued. You don't have to be a fan of Boston Legal to answer that one. My formal resource officer used to call it plausible deniability. My wife prepared me for this as I accepted the position of superintendent. You will never need even thicker skin, she told me. That is not a problem, as I often don't disagree with the arguments being made by our stakeholders, which bring me to my point. Our inability to have statewide prescriptive plan laid out by our governor and supported by our commissioner has put us all in a lose-lose situation. On August 7th, our governor came out and reduced public gathering sizes, something about bars trying to masquerade as popcorn vendors and finding loopholes. The point here is that governor and his team of experts have developed a very thorough, thoughtful, and sound phased-in state reopening plan. In fact, it is working. Why hasn't that been done for education? The governor's regular press conferences sharing COVID-19 data and science because it's about the science and the data, right? Some questions to ponder. Why hasn't the governor shared his statewide school entry data science metric for reopening or closing schools like he has for the current state plan? Why is it left up to individual boards of health? Where is our state plan by the governor that determines if teachers are essential workers? Why are we as a powerful state association not pushing him to answer these simple questions? Why aren't our school committees, our communities? I read in the link to the article that the governor's presser on August 7th, safety standards and checklists, restaurants, and thought, wow, that is impressive, and a detailed document, clearly defined expectations. Wouldn't it be great if the governor's team had such a detailed and well-thought-out plan for our schools? Are they not just as important? We have 3 weeks before teachers show up to our schools, and the governor's frequent televised press conferences are absent the Commissioner of Education. Wouldn't it be a good time for the governor to have weekly, if not daily, updates on his vision of education alongside the commissioner, to put us all at ease, to unify us around one message? Is it not too late to push back and start holding our governor and governance accountable? My plea is that the Massachusetts Association of Superintendents, in unison with our members, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, our local communities, get back on our horse and hold the governor accountable. Make him, like us, answer these tough questions. Where is your plan for schools? Are teachers and support staff essential? And what are your policies around them returning to work? What are your policies to support your philosophy that we should reopen our schools? What are you doing for our educators who will return to school without daycare? When you make decisions restricting phase implementation, have you thought about the impact and contradictory message it is sending to superintendents currently in negotiations to follow your lead to open schools? When you reduce outdoor gatherings from 100 to 50, have you thought about the impact that that will have on our plans to have outdoor learning? When you only allow gatherings of 25 indoors, how can you expect to fill schools with hundreds? Why aren't you and the commissioner meeting daily and publicly supporting your superintendents? What is your scientific metric for when we should open or close our schools? And it goes on a little more, and I know that was wordy, and thank you for your patience in hearing it. And, you know, folks can choose to agree or disagree with some of the sentiments that are in it, but I read it only as a baseline to say that here in Rockland Public Schools, and really any district, we were up against an unsolvable problem and continue to be up against an unsolvable problem. And the work and the man-hours and the care and the time that have been put into this by Dr. Cron, by everybody, administration, the teachers, parents, has been just incredible. And despite that, as we all say, when we look at this plan, even as we talked about last week, it's certainly not perfect. It's not. But it is the best plan that we could possibly have at this moment in this time for Rockland, okay? You know, I think a lot of folks, as we reopen and consider how to live these lives going forward, some areas have received a lot more guidance than others. And in schools, in my opinion, and I think in some others, including the Situate School District, schools have not been given adequate guidance and support in how to reopen and how to reopen safely to the teachers. How do they feel safe about coming into school for kids? And to have this unsolvable problem, you know, it's certainly not perfect, but I just want to thank you and every single person involved in producing this very, very detailed and thoughtful document. And, you know, while I do have some concerns about it, it's not perfect. It's as good as it can. I think it's as good as it's ever going to be. So thank you. Thank you for hearing me out on that. And, you know, I think despite what's going on, I think we're in the best position to move forward as a district.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Wiggins. Any questions?
No, not other than that.
Okay. So last, that would be me. I don't actually have any questions. I feel like we discussed a lot of this last week, and I've been seeing you now every couple of days here. But I do want to say that this is a very fluid situation, that we're voting on it today, and it could change tomorrow, okay? They're making us vote on it, right? We have to send it in by Friday, and yet by Monday, it could really be something other than this. And like we're saying, none of us think that this is wonderful. We all don't agree with it. I am personally concerned for the families in Rockland. We were made to choose out of 4 plans. None of them were great. Half days is where we were headed before. Now we're on, full week off. I've heard from families on both sides of the fence. I'm going to be in Boston working. I'm not going to be able to get my first grader off the bus at noontime. I've heard from parents that both obviously work full-time. I'm not going to be home for a whole week. How am I going to tell my employer? The answer is, I don't know. And just like Dan's saying, they're sort of tying our hands. I don't have a solution to be able to fix the families in Rockland, and yet we sit here, and that's sort of what we're supposed to do, right? We're supposed to take care of our own. We're supposed to be here for the students and the families in Rockland. And I just want to say we're a village, and this is going to we're going to vote on this tonight, but it doesn't end here. It's going to keep on going, and hopefully we're going to pull out of all of this mess. Hopefully, you know, it will be soon rather than later. Hopefully it doesn't go all the way to June. But as soon as we're clear to be back to not 6 feet away and not social distancing, then these cohorts will all go back in and we'll be back to normal. I have been asked that, when does this end? It ends when we get to be not socially distanced and we can function the way we were last year. So with that said, I kind of went off on my little tangent, but I just feel like I don't love this. I don't think any of us love this, but we're sitting in these seats and, you know, we're trying to do what's best and safest. This plan gave us the safest, less exposure, and I think that is the best deal. So, if anyone else, questions, comments?
Just another comment too, you know, as difficult as it was to sort of get to where we are and to come to sort of any plan, never mind vote on it, it's going to be so much harder to live it, right? Like the problems that we're noticing in it just on paper and trying to consider what might be, we don't know what it's going to look like, right? I mean, once it first happens that we have that off week and we have remote learning and we have to be home with our kids and we have 2 parents that work and we're trying to figure it out. I mean, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what it is for my family. I don't. It's just not a perfect situation.
It's not.
None of it is. And there's nothing that I, or this committee, or Alan, or any other district, or any other place in this Commonwealth anyway, can come up with a perfect plan.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's adapting, it's adaptation.
It
Yeah.
is, but I think sticking together
Yep.
is a big part of all of this too. Like, we know we're all sort of in this world, and it isn't getting any better. And for the families that work full-time, that are feeling the stress to pay the mortgage and teach your kids, you're not alone. You need to be reaching out to us, and we'll help you try to figure out a way, or maybe there's a neighbor or somebody that has a high school kid that can help too, or I don't know what Dove's Nest is doing, but I just feel like we need to stick together and not fall apart.
And I say parents, but it's our teachers too. I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
our teachers have
Correct.
their own school-age
Yeah.
kids that either go to school in
Exactly.
Rockland or other schools, and they need to be at home. They're going to work harder than maybe they ever did this year.
Exactly,
And
exactly,
I wish I had an answer. I wish I had a wand, and I wish anybody did.
right.
Yeah,
I
well-
think too, the social emotional for the teachers, just like the nurses, just like you, Dan, on your everyday work, right? The fear of going in and needing to deal with this again, and then the next day, and then the next day, and then the next day. On the kids, the teachers, it is going to grow, you know, it is going to be carried, and it takes a toll. So I think that's another thing we need to be aware and support all of that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's already taken a toll.
Right.
Like I said last week, I'm seeing it in my own kids, and
Correct.
and we haven't hit the worst. We haven't hit the toughest part. There's tough days ahead. I mean, this is going to be hard. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard on educators. It's going to be hard on
Kids.
kids.
Students.
Right.
students,
It's going to be. It's
yeah,
not going to be easy.
parents,
So,
community.
Again, it takes a village thing. I mean, that's a quote that's been used a million times, but that's really what it's going to be. I mean, we're going to have to figure it out as a community. We're going to have to figure it out as neighbors. We're going to need to, be better neighbors with each other. We're going to need
Right.
to communicate better. We're going to need to sort of get back to what's best of Rockland. And I know we've got that. We've got a lot of that. And I got confidence that we can get through it together. But it's going to be tough.
I agree. I agree.
The community.
So are we ready?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to accept the reentry plan for fall 2020.
Second.
All those in favor?
Hi.
Aye. That's a vote, people. It's not, like I said, the best vote, but here we are. I am proud that we are sitting here as a team, and I do feel that the team we have behind us that has been working on this for many, many, many hours and many months is what sort of makes me feel comfortable that we're sitting in this seat tonight. So I did want to add that. I said it last week. I want to say it again. Thank you. We'll move on to the new business, COVID language for the handbooks. We have the high school, the middle school, and the 3 elementary schools together with their COVID language.
Is
The
it first reading?
first reading. Yes,
We want to waive the first reading?
yes.
If possible.
Motion to waive the first
Second.
reading?
I
Go.
I
Go
just
ahead.
had a couple questions.
Sure.
I took my little highlighters and compared all 3 of them, sorry. Just some of the language is slightly different, and I know it can be different based on the school. I just had just a couple questions. Elementary school, bullet number 5, talks about personal belongings, but it's not referenced anywhere else. Do we need to be consistent about that, as well as I think the elementary and the middle school, bullet number 3, talks about repeatedly failing to meet the COVID needs still be put in remote learning. Just didn't seem that included in the high school. Just a couple little wording changes, or the gist was all there, but I didn't know if we should be consistent.
Maybe you'd want a table then.
Maybe we do.
We're
yeah.
going to table.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
Motion
right,
to
sorry.
I'm glad you asked, Jamie. I think if you have
Yeah.
a question, we
motion-
should ask.
Motion to table.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
Second.
And I think I had the comment too, and I know, Dan, you've said this to me once before, about the discipline about not maintaining the 6 feet, that we're going to sort of stand on our heads with the student that can't maintain the 6
When people ask me,
feet.
how are you going to handle a student who refuses to wear a mask? How are you going to handle a student who refuses to remain socially distant? And my answer is the same way we would deal with any other issue of failure to comply. We're asking everyone to do a very difficult thing, to wear a mask all day,
Right.
to remain socially distant. We're not going to punish a student if they if they wander into someone's zone. I
Right.
mean, we're not going to be unreasonable, but if we have a student who is repeatedly and routinely bothering other kids by taking their mask off on purpose or pulling, well, then we're dealing with behavior.
Exactly.
That happens whether you're dealing with someone's pen or their hat or a shoe or a mask. So
Right.
I don't see any different in how we're going to address. I think it's going to raise all kinds of new issues. As Mr. Biggin said, you know, the implementation of this plan is going to be, if we think this has been hard,
I know, right. It's when the rubber
it's
hits the
gonna be
road, right?
This was a walk in the park,
Right.
sitting around for endless hours figuring this stuff out. But when we go to implement it, that's when it's really going to pop.
Right.
So again, it's important that families accept their responsibility, that you have conversations with your children about it. But I have to say, I'm incredibly optimistic, and I don't think that I'm just being Mr. Optimist. The feedback that I've gotten from teachers and families has been very positive, and my sense is that everyone will comply. And we had graduation, it was unbelievable. We had National Honor Society induction, and it was unbelievable. The kids were outstanding. So I have every reason to believe that we can pull this off, or I wouldn't be proposing it. But that's sort of a long answer to your question.
No, I just wanted to make sure that they understood where we were coming from.
Right.
I think it's human nature to step within 6 feet of each other. I think we all have naturally done it. I know I have.
Right.
So that's why I just wanted to send that home, that we sort of get that this would be not that.
Right.
So I
Right.
just wanted to make sure we said it out loud.
Yeah, what's the first thing Mr. Phelps did at graduation?
I don't think it was Mr. Phelps. I think it was Mr. Biggins.
Oh,
Went in
I don't
for a
know.
hug.
The hugs.
Went in for a hug.
Hugs. I know. I can't help it. I know. No,
I
it's
think that's
true,
what I'm
though.
saying.
I
Even
know.
at the
You're
grocery
s-
store,
you're
you're trying
trained to
to-
shake hands.
Exactly.
We're trained. It's not polite to not shake hands, right?
Right.
No, it's elbows.
Now
And
it's
now it's
elbows.
Oh, I
over
love
there.
Mr. Phelps, that's right. I did.
Right. No, but Mr. Phelps shook my hand
Oh,
the
he
time
did.
before, so I remember I was like, oh, here I'm standing in front of 1,000 people shaking hands. I'm breaking the rules already.
Right.
I hate to tell you, I've hugged Mr. Phelps about 15 times since then.
Yeah.
I think I hugged him on the way out of graduation, just
Yeah.
to put it on the record, so it wasn't just you two. But that's the point, I think,
It's
that
hard
we're
to-
human, and that's what we do.
It's hard to
So.
break those.
All right, next we have, so we motioned to table that.
Yep.
We had a first and a second? I don't think we voted.
No,
Did we
you
vote?
didn't vote.
No, we didn't
Okay,
Correct.
first and a second?
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Program.
Right, RHS Program of Study changes. This is also
First reading.
a first reading. Do we want to
Talk about it.
talk about it and then send it for the table, or do you, that's what we normally do, right?
Yeah.
I'm glad you're here, Mr. Mills.
Me too.
Any questions, anyone on them?
Mm-mm.
No?
No, looks good.
Me too.
Yeah.
to add to the curriculum.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Yes? All right, so.
Motion to
Mo-
table?
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor to table?
Aye.
Okay. Nothing under personal information, so we'll go to public service announcements. I'll start with you, Ms. Davidson.
I would just like to thank the community for reaching out if they had specific questions. As we've all said here tonight, it's going to take a village and it's going to take a strong community to get through this, especially it's a new beginning, I would say, unfortunately, and it's going to be the way of the future, and we are going to have to find our new normal together. And I think as Rockland, we can do that. So buckle up.
I'm going to go left with you, Mrs. Hennessy. We'll go ladies first.
Don't have anything else to say. I guess to the families, check your junk mail. I think the first email selecting your choice might have went to the junk folder of a lot of individuals. So not that that's going to impact people's choice, but I think hopefully everyone is aware and discussing those choices with their families and their kids. I know my son wants to just stay home and not do schoolwork at all. So that's going to be fun.
think I will do
But just if there are questions, just keep reaching out to your principals and to us as a committee, and we'll get through this. It's 1 month away, less than that, right? So
Right.
it's coming fast.
Coming fast.
Thank you.
Mr. Mills?
I want to second that. If you have a question, call. You know, basically. I mean,
Right.
you know, don't fester with, you know, any information that you're saying, well, maybe I should do this, or maybe I should do it. Just do it. Call us here, contact somebody, and, you know, because if you have a question, it's like everything else, like every teacher says, somebody, you don't have a question, and somebody else has it, it's the same question.
Right,
And,
right.
and just do that. Take care of each other, you know, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. You know, if you see something, check on your neighbors, you know, sometimes you don't see them for a couple of days, you wonder why, you know,
Right.
and stuff like that, so, and, you know, of course, be kind,
Be kind.
yeah.
Mr. Begins?
Don't have a whole lot. I mean, other than, you know, we talked a whole lot of doom and gloom about what's coming up, and we all agree
Yeah.
that it is there. But whenever I try to attack anything that's going to be tough, I think the best way to do it is with positivity. It starts at home with moms and dads, and we know this is going to be hard, and I think maybe we just try to pull off a good attitude. It comes to the classrooms with teachers, with kids going through the doors. This isn't going to be weird this is going to be weird. But let's get after it. Let's do it. Let's be bulldogs, and be good to each other. That's all I got.
Okay. I have that Ms. Forlizzi sent home some Google Classroom emails with tips and tricks, not trips, for us parents to be able to master the whole Google Classroom thing, so thank you for that. Also, if you have questions like that, from what you had in the spring that you want to be addressed, now is the time to ask it so that we can figure it out while we're in this process.
Yeah.
And again, like everyone is saying, I agree.
Just on that point,
Mhm.
if you have a technological problem, ask now,
Right.
you know.
Sooner the better.
The
Yeah,
sooner the better.
Yep.
And so we're all going to need to have that connection. So we might as well try to cross that bridge as soon as we can. And that's all I have. Again, we're Bulldogs. We'll stick together. This town is together. We're a little town with a big heart, and no one's alone. So that's all I have as well. Anyone else? No? All right. Thank you. Have a
Motion
good
to
night.
adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor?
I'll be
Good night.
quiet. I'll be quiet.